The fixtures have been confirmed for blank game week 29. Solanke and Hwang look like they could both miss game week 27. With the blank confirmed, I've put together my thoughts around the best times to play your remaining chips. And there's a bit of a toss-up on captaincy in game week 27, so I put a bit of thought behind that as well. These are my thoughts ahead of game week 27. The fixtures for game week 29 have been confirmed, and there's only 4 games going ahead. A big shout out to Ben Krellin. You can follow him on X on the you can see on that screenshot of the spreadsheet at Ben Krellin on X. And yeah, 4 fixtures are going to go ahead in game week 29. We got Luton versus Nottingham Forest, West Ham versus Aston Villa, Fulham versus Tottenham, and Burnley versus Brentford. Now, I'm not going to necessarily talk about a chip strategy right now. That will come later in the video. But my standout players for game week 29, you're probably going to want Morris and Doty from Luton. I think Morris is a good shout, particularly because both of them obviously double in game week 28 as well. So if you're heavily loaded up on Luton assets, I think it makes sense to be. You know, they got double in 28 and then they play in 29. West Ham and Villa, the only player I really fancy from West Ham, probably Jared Bowen. I think quite a lot of people obviously have Areola in goal. From a Villa perspective, I think you probably want to cover off their defence, potentially getting someone like Martinez in goal. Or, I mean, outside of that, I can't really tell you a Villa defender that's actually nailed on. And Douglas Luiz, Bailey and Watkins are really good options this season. Fulham perspective, I mean, you could go for their goalkeeper, Leno. He's all right, but they'll probably concede against Tottenham, right? Outside of that, I'm not massively excited by the Fulham assets. Tottenham, they obviously have some good players. Some good attacking defenders, the likes of Porro and Udogie. Of course, Son, Richarlison as well in their midfield. Well, in midfield and FPL, obviously, those two will play in the front line. Burnley and Brentford is a little bit underwhelming, although I would say, obviously, Tony is a really good option. Who knows? Mbumo might be back fit for that game. You could probably go for Reguilon in the defence as well. He's been starting off really well. Potentially get Flecken in goal if you fancy that. But yeah, not a whole lot of excitement, I'll admit, ahead of blank game week 29. But at least we've got the fixtures confirmed. I think it's fair to say that Solanke and Hwang have been 2 of the most popular transferred in players in the game over the last couple of game weeks, right? Solanke with his double in game week 28, people eyeing up maybe a triple captaincy on him. And Hwang obviously playing Sheffield United in game week 26, obviously being a blank game week for some teams as well. He was a really sensible transfer in, but both players might be injured. I think Hwang, it looks a bit worse than Solanke's injury. Hwang pulled up with his hamstring in the FA Cup game that Wolves had against Brighton. It's obviously really unfortunate for them. Hwang's a really good player and I think they'll miss him. But obviously from an FPL perspective as well, a lot of people are going to be having Hwang in their team. And I think given that it's a hamstring injury, it's not going to be a matter of days. You know, hamstring is usually a month or more. Obviously, I'm not a medical expert, right? But he's not going to be playing in game week 27. Probably won't play in game week 28 either. And I think with that in mind, he's probably a sell. As for Solanke, I think with the double in game week 28, he's a bit of a more difficult one to judge. And also, with the state of the injury, didn't play, wasn't in the squad in the FA Cup. And it's a knee problem is what the Bournemouth manager has said, right? And I just think it's really hard to understand what the injury is. Hopefully, obviously, we get some info from the manager in the press conferences before the game week deadline. So if you do, that'd be really positive. But yeah, I'm really not sure what to think on Solanke at the moment. If we get some, defining information on his injury, then we can take action. For now, though, I'm probably tempted to leave him in my team because he's going to be so crucial for game week 28, right, with that double. Sheffield United and Luton both at home. We've seen how bad both of those teams are defensively in recent weeks, right? If you could potentially get a player in off your bench instead of Solanke for game week 27, I think that's probably the way to play it. But Hwang, I think he's definitely a sell. Now, given he's just hit 5 goals against Luton in the FA Cup, you might just already be nailing on a Haaland captaincy for game week 27. But I don't think it's quite that simple. I think there are definitely other good options you could potentially pick, namely Bukayo Saka, and if somehow you've still got him in your team, Mo Salah, right? Saka, he's playing Sheffield United, and a lot of the expected points predictions have him as number 1. So what we're looking at the moment is Draft Hound. They have Saka as the number 1 player for game week 27 for expected points. He sits on 8.2. Haaland's on 7.2, and Salah's joint with Haaland on 7.2 as well. I've also taken the stats off of FPL Review. Now, this Obviously, both of these assume that Salah is actually going to start. And you can see there on the expected minutes as well, it assumes that Salah's going to play 90. Is that going to happen? I don't know. I think that's a bit of a risk, and he's probably the risky captain to go for. But when you look at the expected points, there's obviously very, very little in it. But Saka is actually ahead of Erling Haaland for Game Week 27 for the FPL review captaincy. So just one thing to bear in mind. Another thing I thought I'd do is just compare their stats across the season and the fixtures they've got coming up. And by fixtures, I mean the quality of defences that they're about to face. So looking at the stats, I think Haaland probably takes it. He's got 24 attacking returns from 20 starts. That's actually the same as Mo Salah, but Haaland's got a couple more goals than Salah has. Obviously, Salah scores more points for goals than Haaland does. So I'd probably say the actual returns probably even out between Salah and Haaland. Obviously, Saka's a little bit behind them. When you look at the expected stats, Haaland leads the way in that, but he has missed a fair few big chances. He's nearly on 20 XG now and only scored 17 goals, whereas Salah's actually outperforming his XG stats. And when you look at their expected returns per 90, Haaland does lead the way, 1.09 compared to Salah on 0.91 and Saka on 0.93. But I think it's really interesting when you look at these stats. Saka's actually leading for expected returns per 90, which is quite interesting. Just looking at their fixtures as well. So Saka's obviously playing Sheffield United. And when you look at the total goals conceded, XGC across the season, and then the XGC for the last 5 game weeks, I thought those were some good metrics to compare the teams, because we'll get a long-term view of how they perform defensively across the season. And obviously, both Nottingham Forest and Sheffield United have changed their managers recently. I think it's quite important to see how they've been performing recently as well. Obviously, Man United have been the same basically all season, I'd say, defensively. So Sheffield United, they're the worst team in the league for goals conceded. They're the worst team in this stats for expected goals conceded. And they're the worst team on these stats for XGC for the last 5 game weeks. So that says to me, Saka's got the best fixture. Salah, if he does start v Forest, Forest are kind of in the middle. In fact, when you look at their goals conceded, it's more than Man United, but their XGC is actually a little bit lower. I think that says that their goalkeepers have probably been underperforming, whereas Man United, it actually suggests that their goalkeepers have been overperforming. Onana's actually overperformed his XGC. So yeah, it's just quite interesting to look at, I think. But when you look at the stats, I'd say Haaland and Salah edge it. But when you look at the fixtures, I suggest Saka edges it. For me, I'm just going to go back to the draft time points just to talk through the players. I personally am going to go for Haaland because I'm in quite a nice safe rank in FPL and I don't feel the need to be differential. But if you're looking to chase, the weeks where it's a bit of a tied up and toss captaincy, I think are the times to do that. And this game week, I think, offers a really good opportunity to go different from Erling Haaland, when in future game weeks, I don't think the captaincy is going to be too tough to decide. Maybe when we get to the doubles in upcoming game weeks, there might be, but I think this is one of the few remaining game weeks of the season where the captaincy is a bit of a toss-up. And I think if you're, looking to chase rank, now could be the time to captain Saka instead of Haaland. I thought I'd end the video just by talking through the chips you might have remaining and the best times I think there are to use them. So looking at the free hit first, obviously Game Week 29 is an opportunity to use it on the blank. I would say it's not the most exciting blank game week, but we've seen this season that goals can happen in any game, right? I'm pretty sure it's the highest scoring Premier League season in history, for the number of games played already, right? So there are going to be goals in that game week, and I think if you can get on all the best attacking assets for Game Week 29 on a free hit, it will serve you well. You could also use it in Game Week 34, which is likely to be a double and a blank as a result of the Game Week 29 rescheduling. And Game Week 37, I think, is going to be the biggest double game week of the season. That's what we're hearing. And because it's towards the end of the season, I don't know, I get the feeling we might see a little bit more rotation depending on what positions in the league have been decided and obviously who doubles. So with that rotation risk in place that late in the season, could delaying the free hit until Game Week 37 be the way to play it? Like, wait for leaks, see who's injured, see who's in or out of the teams, and then maybe use your free hit then when we have a bit more information. So for me, I think the 2 best times to use it, Game Week 29, just get it done. In Game Week 37 to cover, I would say it's going to be a bit of a dodgy double given how late it is in the season. Next up then, the triple captain. Obviously, a good opportunity to use it is Game Week 28. Luton and Bournemouth both have a double game week. I put Solanke with a question mark. I mean, on paper, he's the best triple captain, but at the moment, we don't know if he's fit for it. I suggest you could go for someone like Morris as well, right? I mean, he's did well in previous game weeks when he's had a double, but is that the most exciting? Probably not. I'd say it's Solanke or bust for me in game week 28. Game week 34 and 37, obviously likely double game weeks. That could be another time to use it. Obviously, Man City have progressed in the FA Cup, so they're going to have a double in game week 34 or 37. We'll wait and see how that's scheduled. So there's another opportunity potentially to triple captain Erling Haaland there, or also because Liverpool have gone through in the Cup and not going to play in game week 29, so they'll play in 34 and 37, likely to have a double. You could also go for Mo Salah. I'd also say on your wild card, few opportunities to use that. You could just use it this week. We know a little bit more information about game week 29, so you could use your wild card for this game week in order to prepare for that. I've made a wild card draft video earlier on in the week. You can check that out. I'll put a link in the description. But yeah, basically I hedged on the results of the FA Cup being as they were. So yeah, if you want to look at a wild card draft, check out that video. You could also just use it in game week 30, basically dead-ending your team into blank game week 29 using free transfers to pick players that play, and then wildcard in game week 30 to fix your team for the remainder of the season. You could also, I quite like the opportunity to use a wildcard in conjunction with the bench boost. So you could use your wildcard in 33 or 36, the game week before 34 and 37, and then pick 15 players with a double game week in 34 and 37, and then use it. I quite like that option, but I'd imagine for most people, they'll probably want to use it a bit sooner. And then just finally, the bench boost. As I said, I think it's best used in conjunction with your wildcard, right? If you haven't used it already, I mean, basically, you just use it when you think your bench is going to score well, right? So if you've got a bench full of playing players in a really good single game week, then feel free to use it then. I can't really tell you when that game week is. You kind of have to work that out for yourself. But the doubles in 34 and 37, like I said with your wildcard, it's a really good opportunity to wildcard in 15 players with a double and then use your bench boost to cover off the double. And you basically have 30 fixtures from a normal FPL team, which, you know, could be really good for points. I mean, ultimately, we need to see what those game weeks look like to lock that in or confirm it. I really like the idea of being prepared for that. All right, and that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. If you did, please leave me a like rating. Let me know in the comments what your plans are for Game Week 27. Like I said, I hope you appreciate the video. I mean, I'm staying up late at night to make this, reacting to all the stuff that's happened in the FA Cup this week. So yeah, I'd really appreciate a like if you appreciate my efforts there. Subscribe to the Goal to Goal channel, which should be just there. I'll put my painting up for the next video. It fell off my wall just as I was putting together the graphics for this video. So yeah, sorry, my painting's disappeared. Should be back for the next one. And yeah, see you in the next one.